The most unattractive thing to the feminine is a people pleaser. So working with male leaders, what I see is some patterns that keep reappearing. And what we know is that all of these patterns are the foundational belief system that we created between the age of 0 to 7. So one of the common ones I see is what could be described as the people pleaser or the rescuer. We've also got the persecutor, the aggressive masculine, which can lead to the toxic masculine, the hypermasculine. And then we've got some who just play the victim. They just want to have a pity party. They just blame the world. They have very little agency, very little impact. And of course, what occurs is once you identify that, sometimes people move to another area, yet it's still unhealthy. So for example, a common one is the people pleaser. So typically men who are very caring, very kind, what happens is that in their family of origin, their whole reward, their whole gratification was keeping one of their parents happy. Yeah. Often that can be their relationship with their mother, where if mum's happy, I'm validated, I'm a good boy, I'm okay. And remembering that the first 7 years, our survival depends on getting the attention of an adult. So of course, if that strategy works to get mum or dad to respond, I'm going to do it. Yeah, I'm going to get the pat on the back. I'm going to get fed. I'm going to get changed. Yet, unfortunately, it worked at 7, but it probably doesn't work at 37. And what I see is this playing out in the workplace. I see it playing out in their marriages, and I see it playing out with their children. You know, I was talking to a client recently, very successful business in the construction industry. And the biggest tension he has is having tough conversations with his team and being able to look after himself at home. So in his family life, what occurred, beautiful wife, very powerful, career woman. They've just had their first child. And what he did as a people pleaser is he kept putting his wife and his child ahead of his own needs. Now, on the outside, that looks amazing. What a caring father, what a good father, gets lots of validation and comments, and obviously people really enjoy that. But on the inside, he was abandoning himself. He was giving himself away. He'd stopped doing his training, his jiu-jitsu training. He'd stopped spending time looking after himself in other ways. And of course, when I started to work with him and when he started to have the conversation with his wife, what he realized is she wanted him to look after himself. Again, for the feminine, one of the least attractive things to the feminine is a man who can't hold his masculine energy, isn't clear on his purpose, isn't present. And what occurred was as soon as he started to lean into that, look after himself, set boundaries, tell the truth, everything shifted. In a healthy way, everything's changed in his marriage. And I'm not talking about becoming the hyper masculine, the toxic masculine suddenly being the rah-rah alpha male, because a lot of people get caught up in that. That's still distorted. That's still driven by fear. What it is being authentic, the authentic male. And what we're looking for is men who can hold themselves, who can present themselves, who have agency in their life and have compassion, caring, connection with their beloved, connection with their child. And that's just one example of how people pleasers can lose themselves, and it actually impacts their relationships. And as I mentioned, it also impacts their workplace. So when I work with leaders, the people pleaser is one of the trickiest ones to identify. Because on the outside, they're very caring, they're very kind, they behave and do things for other people. But on the inside, there's a level of tension, often resentment builds up. They're putting everybody before themselves. It's a little bit like on the aeroplane when they say the oxygen mask drops down, you put it on yourself first. But because they're so conditioned to put it on everybody else, they're losing breath. What I've created in the notes is a very simple scorecard where you can track any behaviors which may link you to being a people pleaser. And if you identify with that, we've got some other information for you to help you make the shift from being a people pleaser to being the man you want to be. So what I noticed with my client that was a people pleaser is it wasn't just playing out at home, it was playing out in his leadership. And again, very successful business, 6 people in his leadership team. And the leadership team were crying out for boundaries and direction. And what occurred was, because he's a people pleaser, he wasn't willing to tell his truth. He wasn't willing to have the tough conversations. And the story he made up, and I see this so often with people pleasers, is if I'm direct with my communication, someone in my leadership team may get upset. And it's such a setup, because that's not the truth. The truth is that if somebody in his leadership team gets upset, he feels guilty. He feels upset. And what he's avoiding is not them getting upset, but the feeling of guilt and shame in that conversation. And when he unhooked that and realized that fundamentally the other person gets to choose the meaning they give the communication and how they feel, and unless he's willing to lean in and have those courageous conversations, nothing gonna shift. Remember, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result. He wanted members of the team to step up, but he wasn't willing to share because he's a people pleaser. He so wanted to be liked. He so wanted to keep everybody happy. And that's why leaders aren't there to be liked. They're there to be respected.